partisan issue. This is all of our money. I don't know quite how many Americans are in the U.S. capital markets, but let's just say something in the neighborhood of 180 million. And this is really the nub of the problem. I mean, this is our money. This is not an abstraction. This isn't turning it over to somebody else for their responsibility. All of us have fund managers. All of us have financial planners. They may be faceless. You may not have a clue as to what's in your pension funds or mutual funds or index-derived funds. But believe me, it's worth finding out, because I can tell you, as you've already heard, those investments in Chinese companies are not just benign commercial entities. Many of the Chinese companies involved, and we'll get to the thrift savings plan debacle shortly, but if we just take, for example, the MSCI All-Country World Index. Now, this is the particular index that's going to be used to benchmark the international shares of the thrift savings plan, which is a $578 billion retirement system for the federal government and the American military that handles the funds of some 5.7 million of our federal federal employees. Now, mind you, this is not private money. Obviously, this is taxpayer money. So let's differentiate right now between private capital and our taxpayer capital. And that's what makes the thrift savings plan, which is the focus of today's session, of a much larger set of issues, as Kyle Bass in particular pointed out. But we need to do something now on that score, because this decision by, there's a long name for it, by the Federal Retirement Thrift Investment Board, which I just will call in shorthand the TSP Board, the Thrift Savings Plan Board, for ease. They've made this decision for market-related reasons, to capture more companies in the investable universe of federal employees, sort of a technical, liquidity-oriented and yield-oriented set of considerations, which normally is the stock and trade, if you will, excuse the pun, of fund managers. But this time, when you go into emerging markets and away from developed countries where they are safely today, you encounter not just Chinese companies, but in some cases, national security and human rights corporate abusers. Now, let me give you just a couple of quick examples. When you sign on to the MSCI All-Country World Index, you're forcing those federal employees who want some international exposure, which is a normal diversification strategy, almost under any circumstances, but this time they'll only have one choice, which is, again, a fund benchmark against that index, which happens to include a PLA-affiliated company called Aviation Industry Corp. What do they do for a living? Well, they produce a range of military aircraft, including fighters and UAVs, ship-launched anti-ship missiles, not very helpful for our Navy in the South, patrolling the South China Sea, trying to keep that waterway open and away from the fortresses that they've militarized on those illegal islands. It has been sanctioned by the United States on no less than 5 occasions for proliferation concerns. Now, if the Secretary of Defense and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs and our combatant commanders around the world should happen to choose international exposure as part of their thrift savings plan, their own dollars will be supporting that company not to mention the ones that I'll mention next. But you can see the irony here and the dangers unfolding. China Mobile, another one. 15 base stations constructed in the Paracel and Spratly Islands, including signals intelligence facilities and the like. You have the U.S. Federal Communications Commission that denied China Mobile its application to provide telecommunications services in this country because the company, quote, raises substantial national security and law enforcement risks, unquote. That's a federal government determination. Well, you can see what's going to happen to the chairman of the FCC when they discover in his portfolio or her portfolio, I confess I don't know the name off the cuff, but wouldn't it be ironic if there was that inconsistency with that individual's money? In the case of human rights, you'd have the privilege to invest in, unwittingly and on an undisclosed basis, Hike Vision Digital Technologies. Gee, what do they do for a living? Well, they're fundamental to what's called China's technological totalitarianism, the digital surveillance state. There are other terms of art being used for this. They are arguably the world's largest producer of security and video surveillance equipment, cameras, facial recognition technology, and the like. And you can see their cameras. They're deployed every few meters on the top of the walls of the concentration camps incarcerating 1 million or more. Some estimates are 2 million, 3 million. Uyghurs, of the type that you can see from space. The same is true with the Tibetans at railroad stations who are picked up and detained by the facial recognition equipment of this company.